hi everyone. Thank you so much for attending this meeting. Oh, people coming in. Yes, I've let everyone. It's just got them pop up. Make sure you let everyone know they're being recorded. You're being recorded, but we'll only use the recording amongst ourselves. I won't share it. People are still popping in. Maybe I'll just wait a minute to let everyone come in. Should we get going? So hi everyone, welcome to the meeting. Got I think a really good program today. We I know one apology, a couple apologies from for people who couldn't make it because of just short staffed. So Holly Cook isn't able to make it, and Eva Thackeray has sent her apologies as well. So otherwise, I hope it looks like it's a good turnout. So the next agenda is approve the notes from the previous meeting. I don't think there's anything in the minutes that needed to be approved per se. It was just kind of like what we went through. So last session we did do a critical appraisal, train the trainer, and so we're going to just kind of continue on with that later on today with some more about critical appraisal and all that. And we do have a guest speaker, John Rassi from TRIP, who's going to be speaking. Hello, which I'm very excited about. And then Steve Edwards is going to do a bit of critical appraisal. And then we're going to appraise a paper. So we'll go into breakout rooms and appraise this thing. So I chose a paper. This one I've used in the past. So we'll have a go on that. And then we'll just finish up with any other business. So without further ado, about the last meeting or any of the notes from the minutes. John, if you're okay, we'll get started with you. If you're ready.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here's John Rossi. Oh.
Thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to see so many of you here. I've been asked to talk. Well, I've been doing a series of talks across library groups across England in the last sort of 2 to 3 months. I'm up to about 20 now. And it all started from a conversation I had with a local library to me. They'd emailed me saying, we don't fully understand TRIP. And I went to meet them, and it transpired that they weren't sure how to place TRIP in the sort of evidence gathering domain. They saw it as like another bibliographic database like PubMed or CINAHL, which it isn't. And I think when I was able to explain the background to TRIP and where we see it, it was quite useful. But we can talk about that as we go along. But I've got a brief presentation which I'll try and share now. Where are we? Okay, here we go. Which I'm hoping you can see. This will be about 10-15 minutes, and then we can have some questions after that before we go into a live demo. I started TRIP over 25 years ago now, and it was when I'd started working at Gwent Health Authority, and my job was to treat. It's interesting seeing critical appraisal on the agenda, because I was asked to go and train GPs to do critical appraisal and searching. I spoke to about 200 of the 300 odd GPs in Gwent. None of them wanted critical appraisal skills. None of them wanted searching skills. They just wanted their questions answered. And so that's what I started doing. This is before Google. This is when Medline was on 6 CD-ROMs. And I was trying to be evidence-based. So I was going from the handful of sites that were there, Sign, Prodigy, Cochrane, Bandolier, and a few others, which I've forgotten now in the midst of time. And I was jumping from one site to another, and it just took a long time going from site to site. This was in the days before internet speeds were what they are now. And so I just thought it made sense to place everything into an Excel spreadsheet. And then if I had a question on heart failure, I'd say, oh, do a find function and say, oh, look, there's a Prodigy guideline on heart failure, or there's a Cochrane review on heart failure. And, the hope was that would answer the question. A chance encounter with a techie at Gwent Health Authority, managed to see it put on the internet. And yeah, Bandolier, I don't know if any of you remember Bandolier. Bandolier back in the day I used to think it was quite cool, but they picked up on it. They highlighted the number of searchable hyperlinks was over 1,100. We're now around 5 million, and that reflects various changes at the site. And so, I thought it's not just useful for me, it's useful for other people. And I say the primary aim, the initial aim was to help me do my job with less effort, be more efficient, basically trying to be lazy and make my life easier. But it's soon after Bandolier highlighted it, we had to think about what do we want TRIP to be. And it was, it's the primary aim was to connect health professionals with the best available evidence to answer their clinical questions. That's still a primary aim, but obviously a secondary aim now is TRIP is being used increasingly by information specialists. And so we have to factor that in. And that's always a tension about development. Where do you put the development? We're a small company. Where do you put the development budget? And so we try, it's a tightrope. And again, we can discuss that later on if you wish. But our focus in delivering trustworthy answers has always been about quality, not quantity. We could easily put all the PubMed in TRIP, but our users don't want it. They value our focus on the quality angle in TRIP, and long may that continue. We've got a global user base, obviously a bias towards English language, although Spanish language has been growing over the years. And if you combine all the Spanish language countries, Spain and South America, it probably rival the States in usage. Those registered users search hundreds of millions of times. And well, this slide perhaps needs, I haven't quite finished doing the analysis. We've done a survey recently of users, and it always used to be a majority of health professionals. I suspect, having a quick look at the survey results and some of our registration data, that it's going more towards 50-50 between health professionals and information specialists. But we'll have more information on that in the sort of near future when I get around to doing the analysis. And we have a freemium business model. I wish TRIP was completely free. Unfortunately, I'm not a multi-millionaire, and no multi-millionaires want to give me the money to make TRIP free. And so we need to have money coming in. Our operation, while small, is pretty complex. We've got developers, we've got designers, we have infrastructure, and so we needed to have a way of bringing money in. And freemium business model, where most of the content is free and most of the site is free, but for paid users they get extra content and extra functionality. It seemed the least worst way to go. And in England, I was going to say Health Education England fund it for you guys, but in reality I think Health Education is now part of NHS England, so NHS England funds it for NHS England. And this is not exhaustive, this is illustrative. So if you're a pro user, you get extra contents, more systematic reviews, links to full text articles, be it our own database of full text links. So about 70% of all our articles in TRIP link out to full text from our own sources. And then obviously LibKey is a nice bit of tech, and again that's purchased for you guys, and that links seamlessly in with TRIP to send you to full text articles. And then functionality, again, more information specialists with the ability to export to reference management software and also advanced search. People often ask us what we search, and it's very difficult to convey that succinctly, and this is the best effort we've come up with. Got the evidence pyramid on the left hand side, so you're starting off with a smaller but higher quality secondary evidence. So when secondary evidence, we mean content that's gone through another layer of quality control. So you've got your systematic reviews. We lump in systematic reviews and health technology appraisals, and we've got an awful lot of those. So NICE, AHRQ, CADA, IQWIG. And And also we use a special filter to identify systematic reviews in PubMed and a site called Unpaywall. We also include evidence-based synopses, clinical guidelines. We've probably got the internet's largest dedicated collection of guidelines, categorized by geography, and also regulatory guidance, FDA, NICE, Euromeds Agency, etc. As you move down the hierarchy, we have the big 5 internal medicine journals. And again, just because it's in a big 5 medicine, this is more of a prominence thing, because we know that articles in the big 5 medical journals can still be terrible, but they still get through the peer review process. So it's a sort of, this big 5 thing is sort of more of a prominence thing than a sort of quality thing. And also we use evidence alerts, which is a great service out of MapMaster. And again, highlighting this discrepancy around the pyramid. The pyramid is an approximation, because we know you can get terrible systematic reviews, you know you can get terrible guidelines, but it's a sort of help to show our users that on balance this is likely to be more quality than some higher quality than something lower down the pyramid. Clinical Q&As, primary research. So we have got all the randomized controlled trials from PubMed and all the content from a core set of 600 journals. And then you go down and we have ongoing systematic reviews from Prospero, ongoing clinical trials from clinicaltrials.gov, as well as various blogs and a number of e-textbooks. And this marks a departure. I think early on, probably early 2000s, we had a dilemma. Did we want to be, because we knew from our analysis of our clinical question answers that only about 20-25% of all clinical questions that we were receiving could be answered by secondary evidence. So we were at a crossroads. Do we want to be clinically useful, or do we just want to present secondary evidence? And the two aren't the same thing. And so we went down this route of opening up the evidence content to sort of key primary research and that sort of thing. Understanding the search, this is important because it helps you understand how the results are presented in the order they are. And also one problematic scenario which many of you might have come across, I will try and explain that as succinctly as I can. But the basic algorithm uses 3 main elements. It's a text score, or also a relevancy score, which if your search terms are in the title of a document, it's seen to be more relevant than if it's just in the body of the text. And if it's in the body of the text once, it's considered less relevant than one that mentions it 10 times for a similar length document. We have a year score, the newer the better, and publication score. Again, each publication will have a publication score, and this mirrors roughly the evidence pyramid. So NICE, AHRQ will get a high publication score, journal articles middling, and then e-textbooks will get a lower score. And these all combine and you get your results. One problematic scenario which we are starting to fix, which I'm delighted about, is if you do a search, you'll often see documents and think, why on earth are they there? It doesn't necessarily happen when you have a large number of results. But if you go into a, if you filter it to something like UK guidelines, which has got a relatively small number of results, you'll often see low relevancy documents appearing. And there was one example. There was a search. The search was for prostate cancer, I think it was, and you went to UK guidelines, and in the top 10 results was a guideline on measles, and you think, what on earth that's got to do with prostate cancer? But if you did a search of the document, which was 140,000 words long, it mentioned measles. Hang on, it mentioned prostate cancer. I'm getting confused. But essentially, it was a very long document, 140,000 word, mentioned the search term once, and therefore our system flagged it as a true result, which it was. It was recent, so we got a good year score. It was a high quality publication, so it got boosted up the rank. So it went in there, although what's it got to do with the search terms? Very little. And I think if you do ever find erroneous results on TRIP, you will find the search term or synonyms somewhere in that document. As I say, it works brilliantly 95%, 99% of the time, but occasionally you get these weird results, and hopefully that explains why they appear. We just finished last year has over 2-year rewrite of all the code in TRIP, because a lot of the code was over 15 years old, which age of the internet is forever. And that's allowed us to do a lot of, we're now in a very intense development stage. So we've done a lot of focus on quality issues. Lots of minor niggles have been ironed out. We've also introduced a new deduplication system. So about 3 weeks ago now, we removed 150,000 duplicates from the index. We introduced a new guideline category of Europe, perhaps less relevant to you guys, but also we introduced a guideline scoring system. This again reflects the observation that just because it's a guideline and near the top of the evidence pyramid doesn't mean that it's any good. And again, TRIP's role is to try and guide people to high quality information. And so this scoring the guidelines is a way of helping our users understand the likely quality of the guideline they'll be consuming. Randomized controlled trials, we introduced a risk of bias scoring, which again relevant to your agenda. So those are things that have happened recently, things that are happening in the near future. Advanced search, we know a lot of people aren't particularly chuffed with our advanced search. And so the general idea is, the general comment is, can we make it more like Ovid's advanced search? And that's something that we'll be looking to do towards the latter half of this year. Systematic reviews. This is a complex issue for us, but we're determined to fix it. It's taking a lot of my brain power, and so we hope to have that. I doubt that'll appear before 2024. Title and abstract search, that is to solve the issue we're having of low relevancy documents appearing in the search, and we're starting work on that. We've done a lot of the work already, but that's still going to take at least 3 months because it's going to take an awful lot of testing to do. And I dare say it might actually take 6 months. Whenever I say a date for when something's going to appear, rule of thumb, double it. Not because I'm deliberately trying to mislead, but you always get I'm more the optimistic end of things. You'd think I'd learn after 25 years. And also one that's nearly out, so I've been testing it extensively, is a connected articles system. This looks for connections between documents, be it citations, be it semantic similarity, be it something called code clicks. We analyze what people click on TRIP, so we know if a person clicks on document number 5 and document number 8 in a search, we place a connection between them, or we can place a connection with them. And what this allows us to do is, if you click on an article, 3 articles, we can mine these connections and effectively say, you've looked at these 3 based on your clicking. We recommend these following 10, 20, 50 connected articles, and they'll be ordered by connections. So the higher connections, the more they'll be at the top. And I've been playing with it, as I say, in testing, and I quite like it. And I think it's going to be quite interesting how people perceive it when it comes out. This is the home page. Hopefully you guys won't see this because this means because this is the free version. If you do, notice the green background. If you do see this, you need to go into login and put in your Open Athens. A lot of people can just get access via IP authentication. We've got a huge list of IPs that cover the NHS, but it's not exhaustive. So if you see this, you need to log in using Open Athens. This is what you should see. It's nice and yellow, and you've got a pro lozenge over the P in the logo. And we'll look at this later. And this is the results page. So you've got the top, you've got the search you put in. On the left-hand side, you've got the ability to filter your results. And on the main thing, you've got the actual search results. Right, I'll stop sharing now. I'll come back to you guys and I will take any questions if there are any.
It's really interesting. Does anyone have any? How many? Does anyone in our group actively use TRIP for their searching? I suspect this would be like a really good resource for Would you think, like, if someone's being asked to look for like guidelines or things like that, would TRIP be particularly useful for that? For finding kind of like or what would you say are like this, it's, I mean, I'm sure it has lots of strong points, but for the types of searches people do, advanced searching, what do you think is Trip's strongest point for like the type, for the types
Yeah,
of searches people may be doing?
it's an interesting one, and it's a struggle for me to, because again, it's got two masters. It's got clinicians, health professionals, and it's also got information specialists. Regarding information specialists, I think what seems to be the consensus from talking to people is that it's very good for initial searching. So you get a feel for, are there any big documents out there, be it guidelines, be it systematic reviews, often, because a lot of our secondary evidence is grey. So you're not
Mm-hmm,
going to find that in a search of the bibliographic databases.
mm-hmm,
And so, people will often look at, because again, I was doing some work with an American company, and they were just concentrating on primary research. And I say, you're nuts, because you'll really, if they were doing a thing to do step-by-step reviews for nurses, I said I'd be really annoyed if I'd spent 6 weeks doing a review on primary literature and knew that, say, the AHRQ had just released a systematic review, or there was a guideline by the relevant professional body that they hadn't seen. And so I think there's, to me, it's a good place to start. It gives you a sense of, have there been any big documents produced by any of the major producers, and it's also nice to see any other sort of niche products which have gone, where people have critically commented on primary research, and also it gives you a sense of the landscape of what's out there.
mm-hmm. Yeah, we just had someone, Yvonne, say that she hasn't used it recently, but in the past for like CCG searches on talks she wasn't finding elsewhere, or a specific type of evidence like a guideline. So yeah, I could see that that would be, because yes, sometimes I do get asked for, can you find me guidelines or things like that, and sometimes the bibliographic databases aren't necessarily the most appropriate tool to go to. So um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, and you say you get a lot of clinicians using it. Do they use it kind of as like a point of care? Like, do they, if they quickly need to get some, or is it maybe more kind of a long-term um, bit of research they're doing? Would they use it
Well,
to find?
it's they say clinical. We ask them, and most of the time it's clinical question answering. So they have a question. I suspect not all of it will be point of care. I suspect it's more, we have a question, or I'll look at TRIP later, because it's not like a point of care like up to date,
Yeah.
or the BMJ thing. So it's not designed like that. So I think it's more the sort of, when you've got a bit of time and you want to look it up.
Hmm.
So, but also, we get a lot of people, nurses in particular, doing assignments and stuff, and they find it useful.
Hmm.
And I think again, TRIP is easy to use. And I think that's, when we ask users what they like about TRIP, one of the things is there's no steep learning curve. Because learn to search Medline properly or CINAHL is not easy, and if you're busy. And so I think there's that nature. And I think again that the linking the color scheme to the evidence pyramid is well received as well, because again, these, you guys invariably train health professionals. You perhaps have half an hour or an hour with them, and that's about it. And they're busy people and they're jumping around, and so the best will in the world, you're not going to convince. It's like teaching GPs mesh. What's the point? They never get. There's only 1% or less than 1% are ever going to use it. And it's like, because they haven't got the time to do it. And that's where, again, where TRIP comes in, I think, is just they know how to search Google, stick the search terms in, and away you go.
Hmm. We had a couple more responses. So Andrea was saying, as a newbie to the profession, actually like using it as it helped me understand the evidence pyramid. I like this new idea of connected articles, a nice addition to um, combing through reference lists in articles. Thank you. And Emma has said, I do use it sometimes, as John says, for initial searching and for guidelines. I find it very user friendly, more so than Cochrane. Excellent. That's great.
Excellent.
Yeah,
Oh,
Cochrane. Yeah, Cochrane is, yeah. You need someone to actually show you Cochrane. Um, That's really great. Any other kind of comments or?
I have got a live demo if you wish to see that.
Yeah, yeah. You mean now or?
Yeah, now,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
that'd be great. I think that'd be really good. I think, yeah. Go for it.
Okay, I will share that. That'll be the one. Okay, right. Hopefully you can see this. This is the, as shown earlier, this is the homepage. You start typing, keywords come in. We go away, we do a search, and 12,674. I always look at these numbers and think, is it helpful sharing these? Because it's probably for most people, it's 12,600 results too many. But anyway, a slight aside. If you look, you've got the filtering on the left hand side, and so taking a look at the first result, it's evidence pyramids. It's high at the top. You can see the evidence pyramid there. It's from NICE, so high publication score 2022, high year score, and it's got the search terms in the title, so high relevancy, and that's why it's at the top. We have these snippets, which we will be improving the snippets. The snippets are a bit random, but with all this new modern sort of AI and stuff, we're working on improving that. If you don't like the snippets, you just click them off there. Important link here, important button link is this broken link thing. If you've ever come across a link that's broken into it, press that. That sends an email to us, and we'll either fix it or delete it from the index. The internet, it's surprising the number of links that get, or websites has just completely changed their URLs. And so that's useful for us, useful for other users. Again, for you guys, you may well want to export the results into reference management software. And if you click the export articles, you have various tick boxes, selected results only, all results on this page, or all. Be wary about using all, because 12,674 will take an awful lot of time for our system to process. So use it sensibly. But you just use it and see how you get on with it. But if you do selected articles only, you might just click on those two, select that, and you can download it as a CSV for if you want to put it in a spreadsheet. .ras, which is what you guys will probably want for reference management software, or you can email it yourself. If you do RAS, you download it, and then you can upload it into reference management software. Here are the filtering the results. So again, you can just have all secondary evidence. That's all the green stuff. You can just click on systematic reviews, and hey presto, all systematic reviews. Click on that. Oh, yes, that's one thing I was going to show you. Here is a guideline scoring system. So again, we have a evidence-based to one side and narrative-based on the other. And so we deem the Canadian Neurological Association as being towards evidence-based. Again, sorry, jumping back to the filtering thing, you go down, you've got all the green and you've got blue for key primary research, down to primary research controlled trials, and then you've got ongoing systematic reviews, blogs, and e-textbooks. You can further filter by clinical area. We tag articles by the clinical area we detect they're in. And also, this is not exhaustive. This is a quick way of restricting searches by dates. We go back much longer than much earlier than 2014, but this is just a quick click button if you want to get the most recent sort of 5 years, 10 years, or what have you, 9 years. If you wanted to restrict more in a more nuanced way, you'd use the advanced search. So that's sort of basically the home page, and sorry, the main search from the home page. But we have other search interfaces. We have Pico search. Many of you will be familiar with Pico. It's a great way of structuring clinical questions. I suspect this is not very useful for you guys because it's not because of the nature of the search. It is not an exhaustive search. It is designed to return a small number of results, a handful of results. And I'll explain how that works. So just by an example, let's do a search population group, intervention dexamethasone, and a comparison prednisolone. You don't need to fit in, you don't need to fill in all 4 boxes. And if you press search there, what it's doing now, it's returned 7 results. If you did that on the main trip, you'd have hundreds, if not thousands, of results. what it's doing, it starts off by saying, how many documents do we have with all 3 search terms in the title? And in this case, it's 7. And so it stopped. If it had got none or 1, it would have said, okay, how many documents have proved dexamethasone in the title and prednisolone in the body of the text? And so it starts off very specific. If it's too specific, it'll loosen up to make it more sensitive. And so you've got 7 results. So, you know, dexamethasone, prednisolone, croup. Oh, and here's the risk of bias score, by the way, for, I showed you the guideline scoring. This is a risk of bias score. So both of them have got reasonably high risk of bias. But, you know, we've noticed that anyway. Most trials have a high risk of bias. But that's another point. So that's the PICO search. Again, it was designed with health professionals in mind who haven't got time to search through lots of documents, and so we return the most specific documents we can find for them. Then the advanced search, as mentioned, this is going to be changed when we can to be more like Ovid, and so all of the words, you know, that's effectively an and search. So you can either do in title or document. Any of these words is effectively an or search, exact phrase searching. You can exclude words, and this is where you can put more. You know, you can say from 2000 to 2004, or from 2017 to 2020. So that's what you do there. And also, there's one other thing which people often overlook, well, which is our bad design. When we do the new site, when we do the new advanced search, this will be combined. This is recent. And so what this does, I'll clear that and show you just an example. So you might do here, you might do a search for prostate cancer. Oops. And then you do one for screening. And then I like recent because it's a bit random, because it's now called screening #1 prostate cancer #2. In my mind, prostate cancer should be #1 because it was the first thing searched. But then you can just do combinations, so #1 and #2. And this allows you to build up sort of fairly complex searches. So this is effectively doing screening prostate cancer. There you go. Well, yeah, same results counts as before, which is good to see. And so that's about. I can jump back on. I'll stop sharing now, and I can jump back in if anyone wants me to show something specific.
So I just had another comment from Yvonne saying in the past, I've used the numbers to demonstrate, so the numbers of results to demonstrate the differences between the different levels of evidence, and how specifying what type of evidence you want can narrow your search down, which is good or bad depending on the reason for the search. So yeah, I mean, I mean, it's true. Like if you use it as a basic search, you do get those high numbers, like you would in like Google Scholar and things like that. And you just, I like how you can limit it to the site to like specific. You can quickly go to, like if you just want to look at primary or secondary systematic reviews, you can just quickly filter that, or to guidelines. That's a really handy. If you just like, right, I'm looking at guidelines. I've done my search, and then on the left hand side, I can just see what, and you know, and also those guidelines being separated into different regions, I think is that's a really good, I think, a feature of TRIP. And I'm going to remember that next time someone asks me for like to look for guidelines or types of guidelines. I'm definitely going to remember that. Oh, we've got another. So Katie Nichols said, do we need to use quotation marks for phrase, or is it best to use the search is it best to use the search this exact phrase in the advanced search?
I rarely use the advanced search. I just build up the Boolean from the main search box. Well, I don't do perhaps as complex search as you do. And in that situation, I would just do quotation marks. You don't need to use advanced search to activate, you know, to make them work. So, you know, it works brackets, ands, ors, and stuff like that. You can just build that up. And again, it's interesting because not all search engines interpret Boolean in exactly the same way, which I find intriguing. But but yeah, as I say, each system will do it slightly differently. But Trip does it its way, and it seems to work pretty well to my mind.
A couple. So Bethan, I like how it opens the full text of the article straight away when you click on the results. Katie Nichols, again, that's helpful. Thank you. Just wanted to check that would work okay. Oh, and Sally Gilligan said, I think the filtering options are great. So
Brilliant. But again, it's one of these things. What's been great. Well, one of the many great things about doing these talks is people, feeding back and saying what they like, but also things that could be improved. So, for instance, synonyms. We have a I think it's very lightweight, but works very well, synonyms system, and people are not aware of that. And so one of the things that's came up is, if we use a synonym, can we flag it up to people to say, we've used a synonym, this is to help explain. I think this is something we're more aware of now, is people want transparency in how the search is generated. And so we'll be working on that. But again, the filtering is really interesting. But are there any other ways that you would like filtering to be done? So you can do it by evidence type, you can do it by clinical area. One of the things we've been toying was with outcomes, trying to generate outcome information. So you could say, it could be a list of outcomes, mortality, blood pressure, or whatever. So we could, do that sort of thing. But again, I'm not sure if that ever is useful. I suppose I'm putting it out there, not for people to say yes or no, but just to say that, we're very keen to hear from you guys about anything you think will be very useful for you in your day-to-day job. Even if it sounds a bit, I always like the really weird ones, because you think, actually, that makes an awful lot of sense and it's probably useful for other people. So basically a plea there, if you've got anything, even if it seems a bit daft, just let me know, because I love getting the emails and sort of thinking through the problem that people are facing. And it's our job, if we want to be relevant.
Oop, I think you froze. Have we lost you? Technology.
Yeah.
Because it's been around for a really long time. Do you find that with kind of the advent of how so much more sophisticated, I guess, search engines are than maybe back in the day, is it harder to keep up than maybe at the very beginning when it was still a bit new?
No, well, it's interesting because obviously I've matured as a person, and you get more, when you're younger, you're scrabbling around trying to sort of make sense of things. I suppose it's just given me a broader vision. And when NHS evidence came out, I was bitterly disappointed, not because it wasn't pushing the boundaries. I didn't see it as pushing the boundaries. And what I want is for people, either users or other technologies, to come along and, expose me to new ways of doing it. You look around and I think, you've got all these large language models and, ChatGPT. And I think that the thing that I've learned is that you can't be led by the technology. And I think a lot of these products that are coming out are technology led, not problem led. And, we're obviously exploring using ChatGPT and similar things for our own ends, but we're not jumping up and down saying, oh, we must use it. How can we use it? Saying, okay, what's the problem it's trying to solve? And so I think it's interesting. And so, we're in the early days of ChatGPT and large language models. And I think that this will mature over the next 2 to 3 years. And I'm happy to sort of watch the landscape evolve. And then, we will try and mimic any things that we see that solve problems that our users have. But the day you start stopping caring what the users are doing and saying this has taken me a number of failed things I've done in the past, which I thought have been brilliant and have bombed. You learn from the mistakes, and the mistake is, okay, you can't clearly identify what problem you were solving, and that problem was was felt by someone other than myself.
Oh, another comment from Emma. She said, this is a bit random. I have just had a look for a search on dyspraxia and only got results on apraxia.
Ooh. If I can spell dyspraxia, I'll do it now. Dyspraxia. Oh, I've got missed.
Well, I mean, databases do sometimes come up with some random things. It's just the way they searching, isn't it? But yeah, that's interesting.
Oh, I'm just looking now. Oh, the first one's apraxia. I don't know why that is. I can't believe that's in our synonyms dictionary. That's really interesting. Well, albeit annoying. Then there's oh, thank you for that. It's obviously terrible, but I will go and this is something I can go and invest. Well, I say I can investigate. I can go and send it to my techie to investigate and try and understand why that's there. So, but yes, this is what's been nice since we've got the big recoding out of the way, is that we can concentrate on dealing with issues like this. And so I think for me, every time we solve a problem, no matter how small it might appear and how, it's still, to me, it's just boosting the quality. So I do like getting these things flagged up. So thank you for that.
She added, it worked when I combined it with developmental coordination disorder. So when she's a bit more specific, it worked. And then she said, you are welcome.
You shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to. That's another. See, these little clues you see are good. So it's. I'm just doing it live now. Isn't that odd? Stupid site. Anyway, I'm allowed to say that. I don't mean it. I love it really. But no, it gives me something. It'll give. As I say, that'll get flagged up, and I'll have a little look around and make sure there's not some weird synonym issue going on, which I can't believe it is, but who knows?
Any other comments or questions? Well, that was really, really interesting, John. Thank you so much for coming in and joining our meeting and showing us that. I, for one, am definitely going to be using it for specific searches that I'll be doing. So that was really enlightening, and I'm sure everyone else really appreciate that as well. Thanks very much. Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. So, oh yeah, people saying thank you, very useful. Yeah. Thanks very much. So,
but no, thank you for the opportunity. You know where I am. Well, your information specialist. If you can't find my email, shame on you.
Then it's hopeless. Yeah, so you're getting a very interesting. Thank you very much. Really interesting. Thank you. That was very interesting. So, yeah, very good. Thank you very much.
Cheers, all. Have a great day.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
So, for the next bit, I was thinking, I don't know, I never know when to schedule the breaks, too soon or too. I was wondering, because I'm very democratic, and so I'll take what people want. We could either have the break now, which I think could be a bit short because we've only been in the meeting less than an hour, or I could have Steve Edwards, if you wouldn't mind, doing your bit on critical appraisal, and then we could have a break and then come back and do the paper appraisal. What do people think? Bring it on. Break now, or have Steve? What do you think, Steve? Is that too much pressure on you?
You want to leap straight in there.
I did too much pressure on you. It's just the confidence I have in you that you're able to do it. If not, if you want to have to break now, but I thought that might. I don't know why I didn't think of it when I was doing the agenda. I don't know why. I have no excuse.
If you want to carry on, I'm happy to
okay
to carry on now.
So why don't we do Steve, and then we'll have a break, and then we'll do the exciting because we'll need a bit of sustenance or like a bit of caffeine before we tackle appraising a paper. So we'll do that. I've decided. Okay, so now I pass it on to my mate Steve Edwards. mate and
Right.
former colleague. All right, take it away.
Indeed, thank you very much. So, yeah, so let me just share the screen. So I have a presentation in the best tradition of these things. If I can find it. There we go. So, critical appraisal. You should all be able to now see critical appraisal, an alternative approach. Hopefully, somebody will tell me if you can't see anything, and I'll just plow on.
Yes, we can. Yeah, we can see it.
That's very good. That's that's the first hurdle cleared. So critical appraisal, an alternative approach. So I thought of this because critical appraisal was a topic that we were discussing, and I thought this would be a slightly different angle for it. This it might be offer some different way of considering how you can tell people about critical appraisal, and maybe it shows up a bit what John was saying about that difference between how we were might be doing the searches as knowledge specialists, a bit interested in bibliographic databases, and maybe the clinicians are wanting something more immediate than that. So this also perhaps illustrates that different approach to topics that we might take and that practitioners might be taking. So here's moving on. Here's the elevator pitch for what I was asked for. So this is even for an elevator pitch. This is fairly swift, but it was a critical appraisal in 1 hour. I was just got an email from the Northwest Psychiatrists trainee group saying that they had this slot, and could I tell them about critical appraisal? So this was an illustration of why it's a good thing to be involved with inductions as well, because the person who was responsible for organising this particular session had been at one of our inductions, and that's how he knew about me, and so that's why it ended up in my in tray rather than anybody else's. So it did sound like an ambitious brief. I thought critical appraisal in 1 hour, but then I thought, well, I suppose it kind of it concentrates the mind. It does mean you're not going to go into anything in too much depth, but yeah, there's a challenge there. See if you can distill all that information into just 60 minutes. So we did have a critical appraisal session that there was nothing to do with me. That had all been devised sometime before. So I did have something ready to go that I could offer them. So I sent them an email and say, well, yes, okay, this is what we can do, and it did develop a little bit from there. So you might not be able to see this too well, but so I offered some learning outcomes of identifying different types of study and research, defining critical appraisal, the hierarchy of evidence, and then using the appropriate tools. And then the response in that, which you'll see in the red square there, was not to bother too much with the first three and to concentrate on the appropriate tools to assist. So having gone from, can you do us a session on critical appraisal, it had been more refined from that. There was this more specific requirement. And actually, at this point, I think I still had some doubts that well, we're just going to be setting them down into I suppose just setting them down and here are the tools for doing it without having explained what it was. So I think, okay, right. So we will concentrate on the tools, but I think I'm going to need some context as well. And would that still really be enough for them? But I'll sort out a session. I'll revise it a little bit from what we've got for already, because of course it's now got a slightly different focus. So I put something together with kind of quickly dealing with the first few parts of it and then moving on to specific tools. In practice, what serendipitously I found out through speaking to a colleague in the in the research team was, in fact, somebody from the research team had separately been asked to do some more, I suppose, some more practical exercises involving critical appraisal. So they were getting the full picture, but I didn't find out about that until literally the day before I was delivering my session. So that comforted me slightly. I did have some qualms of conscience that perhaps I should say to them, well, yeah, you can't squeeze all this into an hour. You are going to have to ask for a bit of a longer session. But it was all it was all taken care of, and perhaps an illustration of asking more about what somebody requires and how it fits in with the rest of the day that they are that they are planning. So what did I come up with here? Here we get into the meat of the session. So this is what I'm going to be telling about. So tools to support assessment and interpretation. But as I say, I felt they needed a bit of context. So I wanted to, and also I thought this discussion of critical appraisal is just what can I give them beyond just me talking at them. So I just wanted to get them discussing the idea of critical appraisal a bit, and I particularly wanted to get in that final point because perhaps less so at the kind of at this level of junior doctors, but I think there is sometimes some kind of resistance to critical appraisal about the idea that it's just it's been critical in a negative sense, whereas I think that Health Education England quote does go some way to position it as kind of more of an examination of techniques, really, than just saying what's wrong with something. So that gives us a bit of a chance for some interaction and to get some responses from everybody else. And so I suppose I should say at this point, yeah, if anybody else has any responses and they want to jump in, I'm sure Olivia will let me know if anything's happening, or you can put your hand up or just switch your mic on and say something. That's fine. So we've got our little framing session there. We get them chatting, telling me about critical appraisal. I'm still going to cling to my some of the structure that we had to begin with. So here's going through the different types of study, and I think that's one of the things that they're actually required to be able to identify as well. So that's in there, reinforcing part of their own curriculum. That doesn't really take that long to get through that section there. And then we can move on to kind of this pathway algorithm for deciding what type of study it is that you're dealing with. So again, I think sometimes it's easier to have this kind of step-by-step approach, and I've borrowed that from Sign in Scotland, who have themselves adapted it from NICE. So it's just that's there again. That's there because it was originally in the study, the session that we had designed for us, and of course it matches you up with a specific Sign checklist as well at the end. So that gives you some kind of outcome there for your analysis of what type of study it is that you're dealing with. The hierarchy of it, I think the hierarchy of evidence, I think I've actually borrowed Manchester's hierarchy of evidence. Again, I suspect that my group of psychiatry trainees is familiar with this, but I thought this does give a slightly different spin on the hierarchy of evidence. It gives you that's kind of those curly brackets on the outside categorizing the different levels of evidence, and the animal and laboratory studies on the bottom don't always appear in the pyramid. So it does give them a slightly fuller version, I thought, of the hierarchy. So that's all the kind of setting the scene, giving them some context for everything, assuaging my guilt that it was a partial session, although yeah, I should say some of this was done before it was clear that they were also getting an additional session on critical appraisal from from my colleague in the research team. And then starting off with what can I help them with? And I thought that this ideally the course on critical appraisal was being expanded, and all the different modules are being developed. This in practice, this didn't quite work out as I imagined, because although all the modules were being flagged up, they weren't quite ready when I did the presentation. So this was around about this is probably about February. So we didn't actually have all the individual modules to look through, but I can flag them up for them. I can tell them that yeah, if you want some assistance in how you deal with all those different types of study, then you can refer yourself to the e-learning for health pages. What I do think, and if anybody else has got any experience of this, I think it's slightly awkward, kind of picking your way through it and signing up for it, because I think there's different ways of doing it. You can do it without signing in, but then you don't get a kind of a record for your CPD. And I think depending on how you get into it is whether or not you can have that progress recorded and get that CPD record. We at Pennine Care, we've slightly got around that a bit, because we've managed to get that added onto the learning management system. So that gives people a way of keeping the record and getting a certificate at the end of it. But this is just kind of to get them started with what is there that's going to reinforce any courses that they do. Well, here's something that you can do for yourself. So there's there's the first training course. But as I say, at the time, it was only the introduction one that was available. So what else can I offer them? So the Faculty of Public Health has got this health knowledge session. So you might be familiar with these as well. They've taken this over from its original incarnation, but they've just collected up these the video courses and put them all together. So these have the advantage that they're actually available now. There is there's a disclaimer on them about that they may need some revision. So perhaps I might need to revisit these and see how well they stand up. I think they're all okay. I don't think there's anything, as I remember now, there's nothing, for instance, in the finding the evidence where they're telling you to look at HDAS, for instance. I don't think they're citing that as a source. So it's not that it's been overtaken by events. And then the other information in it is kind of generic information about types of study. So it all still ought to be applicable. There is a page of references, other sources of further information that I think might now be looking a little out of date. But by and large, I think the information is there is probably still largely valid. So we've got those training courses from there. I was pleased to see they've got some statistical information as well. So there's a couple of references there for statistics. Statistics, and I think we've discussed this before. The statistics do tend to be the bit that where you really feel you need some kind of specialist input. So at least there's something there that can fill them in on the background on those statistical courses, and just as an addendum there, I think that Open University course, I think that came from one of Health Education England's pages back in the days when Health Education England was still providing information. That OU course looked like that the one that might also support them in their information finding for statistics. I also wanted to include BMJ best practice. I suppose again, there's always that reminder that we should be promoting the availability of best practice, and I thought as just to demonstrate the range of information that you might find within best practice. So kind of circling around the idea of critical appraisal. There's this all the evidence-based medicine toolkit that's on evidence, and again that gives you that advantage that you've got the CPD credits that you can get from that too. And then this is, I think when I first started looking at this, I thought, well, I can't just tell them about CASP, although I feel that that's possibly the main thing that does come to mind. But obviously the checklists are invaluable for giving you a guided step-by-step analysis of any one of the particular papers that you might be looking at. So that's just listing them there as a reminder of what's available, and also the online courses. This partly came about because we were being reminded by the medical education team. There was a bit of a to and fro about what we might provide as a trust, what might we subscribe to, what's the responsibility of the medical education team to subscribe to, what's the responsibility of the library, and one of the reminders was that they do have a personal allowance for training. So I did make specific mention of those actual paid for courses that they offer, because I thought that might be something that they hadn't come across or considered before. And it's not something that we would be providing for them as well. And again, kind of extending the usefulness of a resource. And then offering an alternative to CASP is those sign guidelines, sign checklists. So they take a slightly different approach to CASP. That I think they've their guidance on completing the checklists is a separate document. So whereas the CASP ones have the information all together. Here are the questions, and here's the kind of the gloss on the questions, the explication of why those are questions to ask. The sign off is maybe a bit more in-depth advice, but it's a bit awkward maybe if you've got to kind of flip between one and the other. But and it's a slightly different list of checklists that they've got available. But as an just giving people an alternative, I think, was just to demonstrate the range of resources that might be available. So we're on to my own version of further reading. So again, a bit of a bit like with BMJ best practice to some extent. I'm looking at how can we kind of alert people to the additional resources that we've got. So there's a couple of links to the ebooks, and again flagging up the handbooks. The idea that it's not just the entire book that you might be interested in. You can search for the chapters within the books too. And then obviously a couple of statistical titles as well, just to support any of those online courses. So that was where I came to the end of my presentation and inviting questions. I did have that I have a couple of extra slides. I did have a bit of backup information. So my backup information was this was based on a tweet that basically was casting doubt upon the notion of evidence-based practice, and because it was appearing in the psychiatric clinics of North America, there was this kind of link with the group. So the emphasis of this was on the fact that evidence base has come down to kind of following a handbook, essentially. Here's it's kind of the treatment is quite rigid and on tram lines. Here's the list of things that you will do for this particular condition. I think it's depression, isn't it? That they yes, depression that gets picked upon there. But I thought that might be something that would spark a discussion. So we did get a little bit of a to and fro about the feeling about how much evidence based simply means I suppose something else has already been prepared for you rather than considering each individual case. And that was the bonus material for the group that I had. The bonus material for you is some alternative titles for this particular session. So if I were kind of proffering this at a conference, what could I do to gain the attention of attendees and get people to sign up? So I've got one harking back to Eastern European films of the 70s with the knowledge specialist sphere of the critical appraisal session, and then that again just picking up on that notion that about the confidence that we may have or may not have in delivering critical appraisal. Into the Heart of the Darkness. Into the Heart of Darkness is perhaps a bit more a bit gloomier, I feel. So to balance that out, that was kind of picking up on the lighthouse that appears on those tools that are part of the health knowledge critical appraisal resources. So and that probably works a bit better for the for the actual session for the trainees themselves, but something a bit more positive as well to finish on. So I have I've done all me. I'm going to stop sharing there now and come back in. So that was what I was offering them. The idea being that there might be an alternative that you could deliver to people, that what's most useful to them, and it might not be a direct session in critical appraisal. What they might be after is the resources that are going to support them in their own practice. So something that they can look at informally and in their own time. I'm going to take a breath and I'm going to say, traditionally, if anybody has any questions or observations, I'm happy to take them.
That was so good. Thank you so much. Yvonne had asked, can you share these slides afterwards, please?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely some of those links I want to click on. That was so useful. It's interesting that you're doing the session. They just like, oh, we don't want to know about what it is. Just tell us what to do.
Well, as I say, partly that I did do that, partly realised that they were going to get that from but also perhaps the fact that they had that session in the timing of the day, that bit came after mine. I was giving them the links to Casper and things like that before they'd had the session on actually the practice of it. Oh, I can.
Bethan asked, really interesting. Did you get good feedback from the session?
I did. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I did get some feedback. You're right. Was there an oops there?
That you froze for a bit,
Oh, right,
but
okay.
you seem to be back.
I can't see that. I can't see that I'm freezing.
Oh, you've frozen again. Keep going.
Am I back? Am I back?
You're back.
I'm just going to keep ploughing on. They did give me a feedback, which was quite positive. Although, if I remember correctly, there were only 5 people that finished the feedback. So I can't remember how many. It was the Northwest Psychiatry trainee, so it was a fairly large group. So and I think we were. I think it was you could kind of see the feedback on the whole session, but so yes, it was good, but yes, it was limited. So scientifically, probably not valid.
Feedback is always tricky, isn't it? You send out, feedback session forms, and you get, you don't always get loads back. And some of the we did a critical appraisal session for some junior doctors, and we did it in conjunction with someone from statistics. And the feedback we got was quite interesting, where he did the statsy bit. And he talked about, absolute measures and relative measures, odds ratio, relative risk, but he didn't go into the calculations, and that's kind of some of the things they wanted to look at. So it's interesting to get some of that feedback to see, what they want, and it always seems to be different depending on the group that you're teaching. It's not one size fits all, is it? And I think what you say, trying what you're saying, tailoring, because it is a massive topic. I mean, I've gone on training sessions that lasted the entire day, if not like a 3-day one, which I needed medication after that one. That was just intense. Um, but yeah, you can kind of you do kind of need, and sometimes you don't know. You try to gauge the audience of what they might want, but it's but I love the links that you provided and the tools. That's always very useful. Nicola wrote, lots of new resources here. Thank you for sharing. So yeah, that was brilliant. Um, how's it? Because I know it's funny. I mean, like some of the titles, the heart of darkness. And we do get stressed out about critical appraisal. Why do you think that is? Why do you think everyone is so? Um, what is it about critical appraisal that scares us so? Is it, and this I kind of asked myself this, and the maths, yes, the stats, but you don't always have to go into that dirty stats. You can, but it's true. That's, and also what I've found in some of the sessions I've done, when we look at the CASP um um toolkits, that I have to remind people that these toolkits are just guides, that when they're appraising the evidence, especially within their specialty, they have to rely on their own knowledge. I think that a lot of people think, well, this person got published. Clearly, they're an expert. Clearly, they know more than I do. And that's not necessarily the case. And as we know, not all research, that's why we have to do critical appraisal. Not all research is necessarily good research or thorough research. So I try to let them know this is just like a shopping list. So you don't forget the milk and the cat food. It's just showing you where to look, what to look for, and trying to guide you. But at the end of the day, um, I went on a brilliant critical appraisal critical appraisal slash stats training session in Leicester a few years ago. And the guy said basically at the end of the day, they have to ask themselves, when I finish reading the paper, do I trust them enough to give whatever treatment they're recommending to me, to my family, to my patients? And if you're still having and hawing at the end of it, that's that's the decider, isn't it? Yeah, a lot of people saying the maths, lots of new resources. And Yvonne saying, I worry that people I am teaching know more about the topic when I'm teaching using a specific paper than I do, and will ask stuff I can't answer. Yes, I hear you. I know this shouldn't be an issue as I'm teaching the skill, not the understanding of the actual medication therapy, but it always makes me edgy. That and the stats, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I guess when we teach anything, we're always worried that we're going to get a question that we like, well, I don't know. But yeah, we do have to remind I guess people like we're doing, we're showing you the process, but we're not medical experts, and there's only so much. And I also tell people, when I'm looking at some of the stats with them, I have to remind them I'm not a statistician, so I can only give you a basic understanding of what these might mean. But yeah, it can be quite stressful. Um, that was brilliant. Thank you so much, Steve, and thanks
Thank you.
for like switching the schedule around. And yeah, we look forward to getting those slides and like clicking on those interesting links. Any other comments or questions for? Thank you. Yeah, so Amy said thank you, Stephen. So yes, I think round of applause. Oh, did it work? Oh yeah, there it is. There are my little clappy hands. Clappy hands, clappy hands. So we will go on our break. I think we deserve a break, and then we'll get back to appraising a paper, and then I get to play with putting you all into groups and not accidentally disconnecting me from teams, which I always seem to do. But if that happens, if I suddenly disappear, it's because I've messed up. Oh, great timing as I'm doing 3 critical appraisal sessions in the next 2 weeks. So thank you so much. Whoa. Power to you, Yvonne. Yeah, critical appraisal is getting more and more asked for and popular. So let's, I'm not going to stop the recording, but I'm going to remember to turn off my camera so that people can't see me chatting wordlessly to colleagues in the back room. So we'll take a 15-minute break. What time is it? So about 11:35-ish. Okay, thank you. Go on your breaks, everyone. Hi. Can everyone hear me? Thumbs up. Can people hear me? No? Ah, okay, good. I'm paranoid. Great. Thumbs up, thumbs up. So we're back. So I hope everyone got in the attachments when I sent out the agenda, the link, the attachment for the paper. I put a link to it. I hope it works. Tell me if it doesn't. And then I also put a link to the CASP. So what I thought we would do, hopefully you were able to have a quick look at it. I know everyone's busy, maybe you didn't, but this is just kind of practice. I'll do some breakout groups. Talk about things that make you nervous. This makes me nervous. I hope I don't completely mess up, but we'll do it. I'm a grown up. I can do this. So I'll put everyone into breakup groups. Breakup groups. So you're gonna break up with each other. Do it nicely, and then we'll get back. So we'll do it for about, what did I say in my agenda? How long did we say? I put 25 minutes. Is that too long? Is that too long? Steve's making faces. 20 minutes, 15, 20 minutes? What do you think? Hello, hello?
Let's have 15 minutes and longer
then
together as a
you're
big
right.
group.
Excellent idea. Okay, so 15 minutes to appraise a paper. We can do it. 15, yay, yes. So I'm going to do this now. Do I know how to do? Oh, rooms. How many people do we have? 20. We'll do 5. 20 people. All right, here we go. I'm doing it now. So is it working? Is everyone in?
It's not yet, Olivia, but they are a bit slow usually. So if you give it a sec.
Do I have to click? Do I have to click open?
Yeah, you have to open the room and then it'll start kind of
Okay.
doing
Thank you.
something
Thank
in the
God someone
background.
knows what they're doing.
It'll work in a minute. It just takes a little while.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there we go.
struggle.
Nice meeting. Oh, right.
Are we? Hello.
Hello. I hate break. If anyone wants to do a Teams for Dummies, I would love to.
Well, with
attend.
breakout groups, definitely,
Breakout
because
groups.
they
I'm
scare
too
me.
scared. I'm too scared to like, because I remember when it was Emily who did them, and she could just like wander in and out. And
Yeah,
I
you
tried
can-
doing that once, and I accidentally left the entire Teams meeting because I clicked the wrong button. And I'm like, now I'm too scared to do it. And so I really need to go on a course to how to use Teams. It's shocking.
The meeting rooms aren't the best as well, so that doesn't help because it's very like drags you from one to another. It's all
I
very
know.
abrupt.
I'm just like, I've just like, it's like when like when someone calls and you transfer the call to another phone. It still tears me when I have accidentally hung up on people because I pushed the wrong button. So
You can
it's
do
just
little
like,
announcements as well. You can send like all the rooms
That's what I'm saying,
announcements
usually.
and
yeah,
stuff.
that's like too advanced for me. I need to go on an in-depth course, 3-day
Yeah,
course.
we should tell Lynn that we want a how to do breakout rooms.
Yes, if
Course.
someone's really good at it, please teach me.
Because I can do the basics,
I
but
can-
I've never.
I can show you what
breakout
I
rooms
do
scare
with
me.
them. I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert, but we do use them quite a lot. So if you want me
They're-
to,
I would like, yeah, I
walk me
actually,
through it
maybe
sometime.
maybe in the next meeting, I'm gonna have like, because we do use Teams more and more. I mean, less and less. I say more and more. I know that since the pandemic, right after the pandemic, it was all like Teams, or Zoom. But now more and more people are wanting like face to face. I'm getting a lot more face to face requests, and in person. But I still get the occasional Teams one and meetings and stuff. And yeah, maybe I'm going to put that in. I'm going to ask someone. Show me how to do breakout rooms.
Teams is never going to go away. There's always going to be, especially if you're on a multi-site
Yeah,
kind of
but-
place and
yeah.
stuff. There's always going to be some person that doesn't have time to come to you, or vice versa. So
Exactly.
I still get some.
The other thing that doesn't help is Microsoft update stuff. So one day you turn it on and it looks different,
Yeah.
and the button's
Yeah.
somewhere else. And
Yeah.
the one
Yeah.
thing with meeting rooms you have to remember is you can only do it if you're like the organizer or one of the administrators on the meeting. So we can't see the rooms button because Olivia set this up. So that's
I
one
can't
thing
even
that
see the rooms, but I
that's
can't.
one
I don't
thing
even know
that
where to
can
look.
catch you out if you set it up and then you're not there. Sometimes it won't let you do anything.
I think people like I've got some Teams training session. Maybe for the next meeting, I might ask someone like, show us how to do this stuff. All right. So, how did that go? I mean, 50 minutes isn't nearly enough time, but how did you feel about doing this paper with the CAS checklist? I did. It's kind of a Blue Peter. Oh, you can't see it. I did a Blue Peter one. Like this is one you can't see. I did in advance. It's got like the green highlights. I like when you do. I don't know if other people do this. When I appraise a paper with CASP, I always tell people when you find the answer, or for instance, the first question, was it a clearly focused question? I always mark. You can't see on the paper where I found that specific question, and one I can go back to it. But how was everyone's experience appraising this? I know praising paper, especially when we have to help someone with a topic that we are not medical experts in, and sometimes it can be like, I don't know what I'm looking for. But it's just kind of to show them this is the method of how you would do this. And it's what did everyone, is this something that a lot of you need to do or have done? Nods.
Yeah, I'm doing this next week, so with a horrible pharmacy paper that just kept me up at night.
Oh no. Yeah. I mean, this is like, because I actually did a training / literature search session with some critical care nurses and NICU, and this is one of the papers we looked at. So this is why I kind of kept it, because it was specifically hypoglycemia, but not diabetes. So I kind of started using that as an example search now when I go into departments, because it's a good one. But anyone else, how did you find appraising the paper and using the checklist?
So I think it was fine. I mean, none of us read it, and I got it about 3 minutes ago. So I was like singing through and looking for the answers.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of what you were, what I think was it Katie was saying, horrible pharmacy paper. I don't know who it was who mentioned the horrible pharmacy paper. Yeah, well,
yeah.
I think way back when I started, I did a course which I've never seen again, and it was about facilitating critical appraisal training. It was at the BMA in London. And it was run by Andrew Booth. And we spent 3 hours facilitating a session of nonsense words.
Oh,
Stuff that literally didn't mean anything. And his point was, you do not need to know a single thing about critical appraisal to successfully facilitate a session. And I think the mistake we make when we're not confident is in thinking that we need to teach it and that we need to understand the paper ourselves. And actually, if you're doing a paper chosen by a group with a group of professionals, they know their stuff. You're literally helping elicit those answers out of them.
a good point.
Yeah, and it takes a fair bit of confidence to get to that point, I think, but it's a really important one to remember. Yeah.
That's a really good point.
I think Nelia had a question.
Oh, so yeah, it's not a question, but yeah, I just wanted to concur with what Ruth said. We're colleagues actually, but yeah, I completely agree. And I think with your question earlier about what do you find scary about critical appraisal, I think it's something like training sessions. I think it's something whereby it's like you're sort of tackling. I think as my confidence as a trainer has increased, my confidence with critical appraisal has increased because you don't need to know all the answers. I think that's what initially scared me at first, and that they expect me to be an expert on statistics and on all the health subjects, and I'm really not. But to sort of gain my confidence to sit back and let them lead the discussion took a bit of time. But yeah, now my attitude is you know it, and like you said, it's like a checklist to like a prompt to get you to think of the answers, and they know the answers, and just to facilitate. I think that's key. What we've said about you're facilitating that, and that really helps sort of ease my confidence in that I can familiarize myself with these things like every time, like p-values and stuff, and I always have to because I won't remember. But I think the biggest thing was sort of gaining confidence, just say, I don't know the answer, but I'll get back to you, or
exactly.
That's a really good encouraging them to talk to each other.
Yeah, I like to have a sort of a backup of sort of references. Maybe if there's some sort of terms, I'll sort of copy and paste a list of terminology. So I have sort of notes with that kind of thing on, and I don't give it out at the beginning of the session, but I'll usually give it sort of email it out after the session. So if anybody's interested in the notes that I made for this paper, you can send these, and it's usually things like places to refer them to, or try this, books on stuff on statistics and things like that. So because I know I'm not going to answer the questions as they come up, but I know I've got something there to point them out when they do ask that. And yeah, the highlighter pen is your friend as well. But you are very dependent on the group being a good group, and having read the paper, blah blah blah. So sometimes you do get, and again, that's why I tend to over prepare, because I have had the odd group that just sit there in stony silence. So you need something to say, even if it's just to make grouchy faces at them and just to poke them and get them to try and ask the questions that you had if they haven't got their own to discuss, because sometimes you will get people that just sit and look at you.
That's a very, very good point. And very good points that we know how to do the process, but we're not medical experts, and a lot of these kind of terms, like, I don't know, but you would know that. And it's to remind them as well, like I said before, that probably just as much, if not more, than the person who wrote this paper. They just got this published, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they know more than you. And you will recognize things, and you might notice things that were omitted or were glossed over, probably better than I would. And you have to remember that when I tell them, you have to remember that the checklist is just a tool, but you are the expert, and you can critically appraise this. You have every right to. And I think they still have this idea like, well, it was published, so it must be right. Any other comments about the paper or the process? It's interesting, like CASP, because I don't know about looking at the different study types, and there's so many study types, so it's just tons. But there's also a mixed method study. There's mixed methods where they use qualitative and quantitative, and CASP doesn't have a checklist for that, and I can't seem to find anyone who has a checklist for that. I guess it would be a tricky one, but still, as it becomes more prominent, you think that someone would have done something to, appraise a mixed methods. What would you do if you had like a mixed methods paper?
I think
How?
there's a couple of ones that are a bit more generic rather than. Trying to remember. I've got some links. I'll see. I'll come back
Yeah,
to you in a minute if I find something.
because I
I
actually had
would,
someone
I would,
ask me
I'd,
that.
I'd probably look at the two different study this. So in a mix, like I know I'm doing a PhD at the moment, and I'm using mixed methods. So I'm doing a bit of quali, I'm doing semi-structured interviews, and I'm doing a survey, which is quantitative-ish. And I would probably look at what constitutes good practice for surveys and what constitutes good practice for interviews, and appraise each separately, but then also look at whether, the kind of questions you ask in a systematic review, is it actually pertinent to try and combine the results? Um, was there enough similarity to pull out some conclusions from two different data sets?
Hmm.
It's really understanding what you're doing in critical appraisal. It's understanding that what you're doing is interrogating what's best practice for the particular study design, and seeing whether that's been done, seeing whether A, yes, it has, B, no, it definitely hasn't, or C, we're not given enough information to be able to pronounce. And that's about it, really. That's what you're doing in
That's a
critical
good.
appraisal. I think it makes you can lose sight of the wood for the trees sometimes, and I think
Yeah.
it's important to keep those main principles in mind when you're talking to people, that's what you're aiming to do. But the other thing I was going to say was, like, if you get a group of people who haven't read the paper, although you've given it to them in advance, and that's going to be everybody all the time, I find it's a really good opportunity to signpost the fact that you don't have to read the whole paper to be able to do a decent appraisal for this kind of exercise. It's good to signpost where in the paper you're going to find the answers to the questions asked in a checklist. And the checklists tend to follow the structure of a paper quite logically. So that's quite a good thing to point out to
Yeah,
people as
that's a
well.
very good
It,
point. Yeah.
doesn't have to take 2 hours to read a really dense paper, but signpost where you find, was there a focus question? That's usually the last couple of sentences in the introduction. That sort of thing. So that's quite useful as well.
Yeah.
Shut
Yeah,
up now.
absolutely. No, please don't shut up. That's excellent points. Um, that's great. Any other comments or
I just wondered
anything?
if has anybody done like a guide or anything that does something like that? Like, if you want this part, you'll find this part in this section, or has anyone done anything like that
Oh, that might be a
that
good
they could
idea.
share? I know it's probably different for each checklist.
I have a niggling feeling there might be a chapter in the Trish Greenhalgh book. I wouldn't swear to it.
Oh,
But there's
possibly, yeah.
a chapter on strategic reading, which is what they tend to call it in fancy parlance.
It's helpful.
Yeah, that's good.
I think.
I need to dust off my Trisha
Yeah, I
book
need
and
to
have
get
a
mine
look.
reading a paper.
She's good. It's a
Yeah,
good
it
book,
is a
that
very
one.
good book.
Yeah.
I do have my own copy, and I always recommend it because it is very, very straightforward and lots of good tips in there,
Yeah.
good information. Um, anything else people would like to ask or say, or?
I was just going to ask about, I thought the paper was really good because it was quite short. And that's something whereby it can be quite difficult to
Yeah.
find very brief papers that cover everything. I just wondered if anyone, I always sort of end up try and be like on top of things and try and be organised and find papers in advance, but it always ends up being a last minute thing. But I just wondered if anyone had any, like, how could share like how they go about finding papers for their critical appraisal. What sorts of things do you look for? Because we had a discussion here whereby someone was saying that they've been to training sessions where the people pick quite a quirky paper, like about like dolphins or stuff like that might stick in people's minds, but in reality that's not the sort of paper that most clinical staff will be looking at in the real world. But
I mean, there are some like ones that have been passed around for a long time that are used as really good examples because they're short and kind of, like the dolphin paper one is a classic
Mhm.
one. Personally, I kind of I tried to update. I've got like a folder on my desktop of critical appraisal papers, and I tried to get like examples of different study types like RCTs or systematic reviews. And also if I'm training a specific group, I'll try to get a paper that's relevant to their topic. And I also try to find one that isn't too long. So that's, yeah, like you say, especially if we give it in advance and they're probably not going to have much time to read it, try to get one. It can be tricky, but yeah, I just keep a folder of potentially good ones and then try to appraise it in advance so I have some kind of idea of, where some of the answers might be. I don't know about anyone else.
It's very similar to what I've done. I usually ask them to give me an idea of a topic, and then I will search for. I try and stick to methodology where there's a clear and obvious checklist to choose
Mhm.
from, like that, to just to make like my life easier rather than doing some
Exactly.
sort of
Yeah.
weird mixed methodology one that's just instant problems. If you can find a nice big landmark study, as I sort of commented in the chat, sometimes you can just cheat a little bit because there might be an online journal club or something that has posted sort of some strengths and weaknesses. So, and if they're medical ones, I might just have them sort of noted down to say, if they don't come up in their conversation, saying, well, I don't know this because I'm not a medic, but somebody suggested, it was suggested online that this is a weakness of the paper. Do you agree with that? And it can
That's
start a
okay.
conversation if they're not doing that.
Sometimes
Thank you.
things like back in the day we used to use the, do you remember behind the headlines? I think it might still exist vaguely. So that was quite nice. Also because you don't want a perfect paper,
Yeah.
ideally, and now it's become more and more difficult to find one that isn't. Something that's a bit meaty. But behind the headlines is quite useful because they tend to be topical as well. And things like the what's it called? The ACP Journal Club. If you find a recent edition of that, you've got an appraisal to go on as well. Find something that's relevant to the subject. Yeah, there's places that you can look for papers that have been appraised. They're not always the best quality, but it's a starting point. And yeah, so we don't just have to go blind to PubMed and desperately try
Yeah.
to fish around for something.
Yeah, which is basically what I do.
Mm.
That's a really good, really good.
Thank you.
Any other comments or anything? Well, thanks everyone. I mean, this was really useful. It was a good exercise to kind of like practice and doing things like this in a safe space like this, and talk about our deepest, darkest fears. I think it's always really, and it's and we're not alone. That's the good thing, and we always have each other to kind of fall back on and ask for tips and help and things like that. So if that's all about that, then I'll move on to updates from group members. So does anyone have any updates they'd like to share with me from their library or anything? Anything new happening with anyone?
I'm new.
Oh, go.
Well,
I was actually going to come to you in a minute because that's part of my any other business, but you go ahead.
no, I'll wait for you to come around to it. No,
Okay.
that's fine.
Anyone?
We've got library pods now. I guess quite a few other places have got those, but they have just arrived with us. And I've been doing some stuff with some local public library services to promote their borrow box. We're about to post about that, which is quite nice doing. I've done stuff with public libraries in the past, but it all died a death with COVID. Sorry, that's probably not a good analogy, but yeah. So we've sort of been coming up with some ways to do some joint stuff, which is always nice.
That's great. And what did you say before about library pods?
Yeah, so we've got some acoustic pods where people can go to do. So we've got 2 1 people one and 2 6 people one, so people can go and work or do a conference call and stuff like that
How
and Teams.
nice.
Because we don't have any sort of separate rooms here for people to do that in. So we were often
I
getting
wish
people,
we had that.
they were asking for a headset, so they could sit out in the library and chat to somebody on Teams, which you can't really do when you've got a library full of people doing quiet
Yeah.
study stuff. So we've got some pods. I'll post our website link to it so you can see what I'm whiffling about. On our homepage, there's a link to library pods, and then that will take
I
you
wish
to a
we had
bunch of.
something like that because we don't have a lot of, we have people asking us, is there someplace I can go for a quick Teams meeting or to talk with someone? And we don't really have a lot of spaces like that. So,
There we go. So I've stuck in the chat. That's the link to our library homepage, but there's a button on that says book a library pod. And if you click on that button, it tells you all about it with some pictures and stuff.
cool.
And then you can go onto our booking form and things. So we've had to put a few rules in place because, you always do.
Yes.
No eating fish and chips in the pods.
Oh, yes. Should be obvious, but
Yeah. But yeah, so they're getting used quite a lot.
yeah. That's brilliant. Anything else?
Yvonne, can I ask you where you got them from? What was the supplier?
I can't tell you off the top of my head, but drop me an email or drop, even better, drop Suzanne an email and she'll be able to tell you all about it. Yeah, Suzanne Ford, yeah. She'll be able to tell you because we had to get, X number of bidders, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know off the top of my head. I do know, but I would have to look it up.
Thank you.
And Suzanne's got all the documents and the quotes and all that malarkey.
Okay, so I'm going to, if that's all, updates from group members, I'm going to move to the sustainability bulletin. So Beth and Sarah and Amy, my fellow colleagues, they're going to talk a little bit about um, the sustainability bulletin and all that fun stuff. So go on to you guys. Oh, there
Hi.
you go.
Yeah, sorry.
Hi.
Yeah, so we've just started a bulletin on sustainability in healthcare for the trust, and hopefully Sarah can share the QR code if you're interested in signing up. But basically, yeah, we're happy for anyone to join. So we've got like an online form which I'll post a link to in the chat. But yeah, that was basically it.
Great, fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Fine.
All right. So final, any other business? This was from Eva Thackeray, who had to send her apologies and couldn't attend, but she wanted to make sure that I said that Ruth Muscat, who is Muscat, who is attending this meeting, has left Lancashire Teaching Hospitals for a job closer to home. She said we will miss her, and that Eva Thackeray is now clinical librarian. So she was, I think, the assistant clinical librarian, and now she's full-blown bells and whistles clinical librarian. So congratulations to her. Congratulations to you, Ruth. Where have you moved to?
So I've moved over to Rotherham.
Okay.
So I'm briefly working with Naila, although Naila's about to leave. And there's also a new clinical librarian who was appointed at the same time as me, who's Kathy Stead. So yeah, we're sort of lurking slightly. We're not Northwest anymore, really. But if you don't mind, we'll hang about.
Oh, of course. More than merrier. More than merrier. You're always welcome. So that is not a problem.
That's a nice. So my new job title is Evidence and Knowledge Specialist, but as far as I can tell, it's pretty much the same job spec as I had as clinical librarian at Lancs Teaching. So yeah.
Great. Yvonne, you've got your hand
Yeah, sorry,
raised?
it's just occurred to me I should probably mention that we've merged with Southport and Ormskirk and become, hang on, Mersey and West Lancashire. Hang on, West Lancashire, yeah. Teaching Hospitals NHS Trust. So yeah,
Great.
that's
Excellent.
a thing that's just happened.
Wow.
Exciting times. I went on leave and I came back working for a different organisation.
Oh God, that's well. Yeah. So it's kind of a merger, kind of like what happened to us then, where you just kind of different trusts kind of merged into one super trust, or Trust.
Yeah, I mean, it's we really don't know what's going to happen and whether we just sort of carry on as we are at the moment and see what happens. We're both library service, so they've got, you know, Southport and Holmescourt have got library service. In fact, they've got 2 libraries. But yeah, we don't really know what's going to happen there yet. We both work for we're both under different departments, which makes life slightly more complicated. So there's not a direct sort of obvious chain of command and budget stuff because we're in informatics and they're in education.
Oh,
So
okay.
so yeah.
Yvonne,
Yep.
On that note, if Susan wants to have a chat with me, having been through it last year, or whenever it was.
Yep. I'll mention that to her. So I mean, well, we've been sort of, there's been contact between the 2 libraries and stuff like that, but we're just, it sort of only became official on the 1st of July, so it's, you know, not, and I suspect we're very low on the totem pole for when they get around to stuff. So we'll see what happens. Watch this space. And thanks, Tracy.
Great. Anything else anyone wants to mention? Okay, well, that's great. Thanks everyone for attending today. I hope you all found it useful. Thanks to our guest speakers. Thanks, John Brassey, who is no longer here, but I thought his trip session was really interesting. And thank you, Stephen Edwards, for your brilliant presentation. That was really, really interesting and really useful. And everyone else who, Beth and Sarah and Amy, for talking about sustainability. Thanks everyone for participating. So I'll get the recording and the minutes to you as soon as I can, and then start thinking about the next meeting within a couple months time. If anyone has ever wants to like do a presentation at the meeting, if you've got some exciting project going, or you'd like to impart some of your knowledge to us, you are always welcome. I love it when people volunteer their expertise. I think that's always really interesting. So yeah, get in touch with me if you'd like to participate in the next meeting. And if that's everything, then I will bid you adieu and have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye. And I will now stop the recording if I know how.